Agile. It was supposed to be a revolution, right? But if you're like most people working in tech today, it probably feels less like a revolution and more like a really well-organized trap. So in this explainer, we're going to break down why the Agile you practice every single day might actually be a complete lie.
Just think about this for a second. What if the entire system that defines your work life, the sprints, the stand-ups, the story points, what if it isn't the real thing at all? What if it's just a caricature, a bad copy of the original idea, designed not to empower you, but to squeeze every last drop of productivity out of you?
Right, so how did we even get here? How did this big promise of freedom and creativity become a reality of just constant pressure and endless meetings? Let's trace Agile's journey from a genuine revolution to the empty ritual it so often is today. Honestly, the distance between these 2 points tells the whole story. You start back in 2001 with 17 developers at a ski resort dreaming up a new way of working, a philosophy built entirely on trust. Then you fast forward to today, and what you have is corporate Agile, a distorted, hollowed-out caricature that barely even resembles where it started. You know, the original goal was so simple and so noble. It was about escaping those soul-crushing, Dilbert-esque corporations. The whole point of the manifesto was to create an environment where motivated people could just build great things without a bunch of pointless rules getting in their way. It's a beautiful idea, isn't it? So, if the goal was so great, why does it so often feel so awful? If you've ever felt that frustration, that pain of going through the motions, this next part is for you. And I want you to know you are definitely not alone. Does any of this sound familiar to you? That stand-up that drags on for 30 minutes while everyone on the team just justifies their existence to a manager? That sprint that feels less like a race and more like a forced march? How about the retrospective where the same problems come up every single time and nothing ever changes? Or my personal favorite, being told you're a self-organizing team when you can't even choose your own tools. Yeah, this is the shared pain of corporate Agile. And right here, this is the core of the problem. The manifesto valued individuals and interactions over processes and tools. But in corporate reality, it's completely flipped on its head. Companies go out, they buy the expensive software, they force the rigid process on you, and the actual human beings, the individuals and how they talk to each other, are treated as secondary. It is a complete inversion of the original idea. But how did this actually happen? It wasn't an accident. It wasn't just some slow, unfortunate decay. It was a series of very specific choices that corrupted the philosophy from the inside out. So let's break down the 4 key betrayals of Agile. This quote, this says it all. Agile is a philosophy of trust. Corporate culture, for the most part, is built on command and control. And when you try to graft a system of trust onto a culture of control, well, control always wins. The philosophy gets destroyed, and all that's left are the empty ceremonies. So the downfall basically happened in 4 steps. First, the philosophy was turned into a product to be sold. Second, companies adopted all the meetings and ceremonies, but they completely rejected the core principle of trust. Third, they focused obsessively on process while ignoring the essential technical discipline that makes it all work. And fourth, they twisted the idea of a sustainable pace into a recipe for perpetual burnout. Okay, betrayal number 1. The Agile Manifesto, at its heart, was about mushy stuff, trust, respect, collaboration. But you can't really sell trust in a box. So an entire industry of consultants sprang up to productize it. They created expensive certifications, incredibly complex frameworks, and suddenly the whole conversation shifted away from empowering developers to selling a methodology to executives that promised more output faster. This is maybe the most cynical betrayal. Companies adopt the language of Agile. They'll talk about empowerment, self-organization, but without that foundation of trust, the ceremonies just become new tools for control. The daily stand-up isn't a team sync, it's a compliance check for your manager. The sprint plan isn't a forecast, it's a rigid commitment they will hold you to. They use the words of freedom to build a better cage.
And all of this leads to this Frankenstein's monster of a process that developers have accurately nicknamed Scrum-fall. I love this definition from a developer on Reddit. A methodology with the worst parts of both Agile and Waterfall. It's so true. You get all the endless meetings and rigid upfront planning of Waterfall, plus all the ceremonies of Scrum, but you get none of the actual benefits of either one. And betrayal number 3, ignoring the technical side of things. The original Agile methods were deeply rooted in engineering discipline. Practices like test-driven development, or TDD, where you write tests before you even write the code. But that stuff's hard. You know what's much easier? Scheduling another meeting. So by ignoring these critical engineering practices, teams get pushed to ship features fast, creating a brittle, unmaintainable mess that's just held together with digital chewing gum. That isn't agility. It's just a faster way to create bad software. The final betrayal twists one of the most humane principles: sustainable pace. The idea was to maintain a constant, steady pace indefinitely. Instead, corporate Agile turns this into a relentless push for more, more, more. The sprint becomes a hamster wheel. The second one ends, the next one begins, with no time to rest, no time to reflect. A movement that was designed to prevent burnout has become one of its primary causes. Okay, so does all this mean that real Agile is impossible, that it's just a myth? Not at all, but it is exceptionally rare. And it requires a kind of perfect storm of conditions to exist. Let's look at what that ideal environment actually is. Real Agile thrives in a very specific habitat. You need small, highly skilled teams with immense trust and autonomy from management. They're usually working on brand new projects, not wrestling with years of legacy code. And crucially, everyone, the product owner, the QA folks, the developers, they're all in the same room, making communication just instant. When those conditions are met, amazing things can happen. But let's be honest, how many of us actually work like that? And this brings us to the real lie. It's not that Agile can't work. It absolutely can. The lie is pretending that your company's empty rituals, the status report stand-ups, and the blame game retrospectives have anything at all to do with real Agile. They've just slapped an Agile sticker on a waterfall engine and are wondering why it doesn't fly. Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. We've seen how a good idea was corrupted. But just knowing all this isn't enough. So the real question is, what can you actually do about it? Here are 3 concrete things you can do. First, just understand. Know the difference between the real philosophy and the empty rituals. Second, advocate. Push for genuine trust and a truly sustainable pace whenever you can. And third, protect. Shield yourself and your team from the worst abuses of fake Agile. Set firm boundaries to prevent burnout. So I'll leave you with this one question to think about and maybe even ask your colleagues. What is the single most anti-Agile thing your company does, all while calling itself Agile? Because recognizing that hypocrisy, that's the very first step toward making any kind of real change.